Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a major strategic decision, one that's honestly keeping a lot of financial executives up at night right now. We're talking about outsourcing the anti-money laundering officer. Based on a really thorough analysis from S+P Compliance Services, we're going to explore how moving this crucial role from a traditional in-house hire to a specialized external team can absolutely transform your business. We're talking about drastically reducing regulatory risks while at the same time seriously cutting your operational costs. It's a fascinating look at how smart outsourcing can turn what is usually a massive regulatory roadblock into a streamlined competitive advantage.
All right, here's a quick roadmap of what we'll cover today to build this buy versus build business case. We'll start by framing the compliance challenge, compare internal teams to outsourced models, and then dig into the hard numbers. After that, we'll look at liability security, walk through the onboarding process, and wrap up with how to future-proof your setup. Let's jump right in.
Okay, part one, the compliance challenge. We really have to ask ourselves, is this a core business function or just a massive burden?
Look, there is a relentless, heavy regulatory weight being dropped on financial institutions across Europe these days. So if you're a C-level executive or a compliance director watching this, I want to pose this directly to you. Is anti-money laundering compliance your actual core business, or is it just a regulatory burden? Because let's be real, every single hour your internal team spends wrestling with compliance paperwork is an hour completely lost on product innovation and growing your actual business.
And who exactly is feeling this burden? Well, the net is incredibly broad. Of course, you have your traditional credit institutions and investment firms, but it's also hitting agile FinTechs, payment service providers, capital management companies, and even modern crypto custodians. The legal obligation to have an AML officer, that's universal. But how you choose to fulfill that obligation, well, that's entirely up to your strategic vision.
Moving on to Section 2, internal versus outsourcing. Let's break down the classic buy versus build dilemma. If you decide to build an internal setup, you are immediately eating some seriously high fixed costs for salaries and specialized tools. Plus, if you need to scale, that means slow, expensive hiring. But honestly, the biggest hidden risk here is vulnerability. If your one compliance officer gets sick or goes on vacation, you are totally compromised. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket. Outsourcing completely flips the script on this. You get a predictable flat rate, and instead of one person, you get an entire team of experts with guaranteed representation. If someone's out, the rest of the team seamlessly steps in, zero downtime.
Now keep in mind, not all outsourcing is created equal. When you compare a classic generalist provider to a specialist like S+ Compliance Services, it's literally night and day. Generalists tend to spread themselves way too thin across random industries, whereas S+ is 100% focused on regulated entities. A generalist usually leaves you hanging to buy and figure out your own software, but S+ actually includes their proprietary toolbox. And most importantly, S+ goes incredibly deep into those tricky regulatory frameworks, things like MARISC, GGW, DORA, and the KGW.
All right, Section 3, costs and profitability. Let's talk about the actual financial impact.
Consider this benchmark right here, 95,000 to 135,000 euros. Wow. According to the data, that is the estimated annual cost just to maintain a standard internal AML solution. Keep that massive figure in the back of your mind as we break down where all that money is actually going.
So how does this break down line by line? Well, with an internal solution, your salary and HR costs alone are going to run you 80 to 120 grand a year. But then come the hidden costs, right? You're looking at maybe 5,000 euros every year just to keep them trained and another 10,000 euros just for compliance software. When you put that up against S+P outsourcing, that bulky salary becomes a predictable, manageable, flat rate. The training, totally included through their S+P certified programs. The software, also included with the SGPS toolbox. By rolling all those creeping hidden overheads into one neat package, the outsourced model ends up being incredibly economical compared to that heavy internal price tag.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Quality and Liability Security, because this is really about ensuring audit-proof operations. We need to look beyond just cost savings for a second and talk about actual risk mitigation. To understand the legal stakes here, we have to look at Section 7 of the German Money Laundering Act, the GWG. This isn't just paperwork. This strictly mandates heavy operational duties. We're talking exhaustive risk analysis, defining bulletproof internal safeguards, conducting team training, and handling high-stakes communication with BaFin or the FIU. These are massive legal responsibilities, and these are the exact responsibilities that S+ legally assumes on your behalf.
And, they don't just say they'll do it. They back it up with serious institutional credentials. S&P holds IDW-PS 951 and ISA 3402 certifications, which basically means their processes are universally recognized and totally audit-proof. They also maintain ISO 9001 for quality and ISO 27001 for rigorous information security. Add a confirmed ESG rating to the mix, and you've got exactly the gold standard framework that regulators want to see.
So, what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's hear from someone using it. Isabel K., who is an AML officer at a capital management company, said that S+ convinced them with clear structures and a digitally supported implementation. She called the cooperation professional, efficient, and absolutely reliable. That is exactly the peace of mind an audit-proof setup should give you on a daily basis.
And this security scales so well, even into highly complex, modern sectors. Miriam S., the head of compliance at a crypto custodian, noted how valuable the combination of personal advice and digital tools is. She mentioned the processes are now clearer, more documented, and risk-free. So yes, even in something as cutting-edge as crypto custody, this solution provides undeniable clarity.
Which brings us to Section 5, the onboarding process. How do we achieve a seamless integration?
You might be wondering, okay, but how do I actually make this switch without causing a massive disruption to my current operations? Well, SP breaks it down into 3 really simple, elegant steps. Step 1 is the inquiry. You sit down with their industry experts to figure out exactly what you need. Step 2 is the offer, where you get a tailored proposal that's totally flexible in scope. And Step 3 is the contract. Boom! That kicks off an efficient integration into your existing processes, giving your team virtually instant relief.
Finally, Section 6, our conclusion. Flexible, secure, and future-proofing your compliance.
All right, let's pull all this together. What are the big takeaways? By shifting to this model, you get an instant professionalization of your compliance strategy. You massively reduce your personal liability and regulatory risk. You get totally predictable costs with zero hidden overhead and a highly scalable solution that grows right alongside your firm. Most importantly, you get continuous updates on BaFin and FIU regulations. Ultimately, outsourcing acts as a huge strategic reliever. It literally frees up your team so they can focus entirely on driving your core business forward.
So, to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question. I want you to critically evaluate your own structures right now. Is your current anti-money laundering setup truly audit-proof and economically efficient? Take a hard, honest look at your internal resources, those creeping hidden costs, your technology stack, and your overall liability exposure. If the answer isn't a confident yes, well then it might just be time to fundamentally rethink how you handle compliance and explore a smarter, outsourced solution. Thanks so much for joining me as we unpack this material. Keep learning, keep optimizing, and we'll see you on the next explainer.